there's been a lot of tellings of your story in all kinds of different media. You talk about what makes this film unique.
For Lorri and I, this was the very first time that we ever got to participate in our own story. You know, there's been other documentaries, TV shows, books, countless magazine articles, but they were all about us. You know, we never got to actually take part in telling our own story. And this was the first time we ever got to do that, which made it extremely special to us. And we wanted it to, you know, we opened our lives up to Amy in a way that we hadn't done with anyone else before, just because we trusted her. You know, we would have never before let anyone else see inside our relationship that way, or read letters that we had written to each other. So this is far more personal to us than anything has been before, also.
And I'd like to add that while we're grateful for all of the footage and documentaries and TV, media, everything that happened in the past, this was our investigation, and this is what we would have put on had there been a hearing. So this was to have the work that we had all done and we had all participated in shown in such a way that Fran and Pete had produced and Amy brought to film. It's there now, and everyone can see what we worked on for so long.
Johnny, you've been following this case for a dozen years or so. I'd love to hear your reactions to watching it on film, watching the full story.
Well, I mean, the first time that I saw this film, it was, I think the first thing that popped into my head was finally, you know, just in terms of the truth, or at least a closer step to the truth, and sort of the main truth being that it is very, very clear. These are three innocent men. Every one of us has maintained, you know, since the very beginning, and to see Damien and the boys one step closer to what needs to be, which is the clearing of their names and total exoneration, complete exoneration of these hideous crimes. So this is another step forward in that, and I'm very pleased to be a tiny little speck in this maelstrom.
Before the film, as everyone was coming in, there was a lot of enthusiasm to see everyone here tonight. And I had made a juxtaposition in my head of footage I'd seen of you 18 years ago, you know, walking on a perp walk into the courthouse, and people screaming out, much worse things than they were screaming on the red carpet today. It was a strange juxtaposition. But so it's so happy for everyone to see you here. But your story isn't over. The verdict that you had to accept is a compromised one, and I wonder if you and Lorri can talk about what the state of that verdict is today, and where you go from here.
Really, the only way this case is going to be reopened by the state of Arkansas is if they don't have any other choice. And that's what we're hoping this movie brings about, is just to keep pressure on the state, keep this case in the spotlight, so that, really what it comes down to is the only thing they care about are their political careers. So it has to reach a point where they see they have more to gain by reopening this case, doing what's right, and putting the right people in prison than right now, which is sweeping it under the rug, hiding it, pretending it's over. And that's all we hope for in this movie, is just to keep from forgetting. It's not over for us. Even coming here today, the first time we asked, I was denied into Canada. They said, no, you can't come in because in the U.S. you're still considered a criminal. So we had to go through hell. We went through absolute hell for the past week. Appealing that decision and trying to get letters of recommendation and all sorts of stuff just to be able to come into the country. So this case still reaches into every single part of our lives on a daily basis, and that's not going to be over for us until we're completely exonerated.
So if our film touched you today, please spread the word, because if we can hear your voices and people speak out, then it is going to bring pressure down on the state of Arkansas and hopefully affect the legal system in the United States from now on.
You made a point when we were talking earlier today about the state that Damien and Jesse and Jason are all in, coming out of court, coming out of this verdict. In a different scenario, if they had, if true justice would have been done, there would have been compensation. And I mean, can you talk about, from your perspective, having been an observer of this compromised justice, how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, if you notice when I interviewed Scott Ellington, he made it very clear that he hadn't gone through reams and reams of paper, but he had spent a lot of time thinking about the dollars, and he had $60 million in his head because that's how much it would have cost the state of Arkansas had they actually exonerated these guys properly. And I just think the fact that Damien was initially denied, and we are so grateful that you guys helped and that we're all here together today, but Damien has very few ways to earn a living at this point. He's given up, almost 20 years of his life, and he only has his story and his words and his book, and he needs to be able to travel around the world if he has to. He needs to be free of these charges. So it is actually an election cycle, and Damien was just mentioning a political cycle. Well, we're actually entering the election cycle in Arkansas, and it's actually been 2 years since Judge Burnett became a senator, and he's up for re-election in November. So we are, and Scott Ellington, since this case, has decided that he wanted to run for Congress immediately. And he is now running for Congress. And so we are going to start screening film starting next week for the next 2 months. We should mention, actually, that these are free screenings, so.
Johnny, a lot of people's response to this case, whenever they came aware of it, was that a feeling that could have been me, that anyone who ever felt like an outsider in their community. I wonder if that resonated for you. That
No, of course. I mean, it's exactly as Henry Rollins says in the film. Anyone who was on that sort of outside who would, gone a different path or just felt different than others. And the fact remains, it could have been any one of us in this room. If that guy with the power decided to point the finger at you, and more fingers continue to point at you, you're done for. And that's essentially what happened. They just, almost blindly just closed their eyes and pointed their fingers and happened to be in Damien's direction. That's why I think, with something like this, as absurd as everything that has, surrounded such an abominable crime, then such a grave injustice, it would be easy for any one of us to sit there and watch a documentary, let's say this documentary, watch the thing and go, oh my God, isn't that horrible? And then, you reach for a French fry. But I think the thing to do is when you recognize the truth especially in something as intense and as grave as this. This step is to move forward, write letters, make phone calls, support these three innocent men, and let's work together for total exoneration for these fellas.
Natalie, having been drawn into this case and you know, had a front row seat at seeing how justice, you know, gets meted out in this situation, I wonder what you've learned about the process, learned about yourself in having to face this kind of adversity of being sucked into the process, or just, you know, what you've taken away from this whole experience.
I wish I'd gotten that question ahead of time. It's a big question. I mean, I've gotten so much from the case, but I can get really down on the justice system and people and individuals. And I have to say, at the hearing where they got released, sorry, what was the judge's name that presided over that? He was an inspiration. He was fantastic. And there are right people and people doing the right thing and the good thing. And I do still believe that the right things will be done in this case. And so I have not lost hope, and I am still trying to keep that positivity.
Damien, I want to kind of give the last word to you here. This film is going to open up on Christmas Day, December 25th. And you also have your own book coming out. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about, you know, the experience, what the book does that complements this film, or is a different vehicle than this film?
The book comes out on September 18th. It'll be available pretty much everywhere. It's called Life After Death, and I wrote probably 85% of it while I was on death row. The other 15% since I've been out. And what I wanted to do is go into things that aren't necessarily about the case, you know, more in detail about, you know, my relationship with Lorri and our lives together, and just how we survived this situation, more than, you know, the investigative aspect of the case. And hopefully, people will see it and want to learn more.
The title of the book again is
Life After Death. It comes out on September 18th.
September 18th. The film is on December 25th. You're one of the first audiences to see this film. It's in your hands now.